Welcome to Circle Podcast, brought to you by Circle Sanctuary, one of the oldest nature spirituality churches in the United States, connecting people of nature-centered paths around the world. Join us throughout the week for a variety of shows discussing various topics, celebrating the divine and all of its forms through nature worship, rituals, education, and building bridges of community. Welcome to Urban Unwitches, a podcast to educate, inform, and expand the pagan community. Please join our Discord channel, Urban Unwitches Podcast. Follow us on TikTok at Urban Unwitches, and listen to all our past podcasts on your favorite podcasting platform. You can also join us on YouTube at Urban Unwitches. Now, back to the show.
We are Urban Unwitches. That's what we are. And the reason we're Urban Unwitches is because we're both urban. Isn't that right, Kyler?
That is absolutely right. I am very urban.
Were you always urban?
I was not always urban. I am actually a country bumpkin. I grew up in the backwoods of Florida in a place where you hear the banjo music if you roll the window down. On a family farm, every morning I would wake up to the braying of donkeys. It was Florida.
Braying of donkeys, really?
Yeah, we had an actual farm. We had I was surrounded by about 50 acres of pasture land on three sides, and there was a donkey by the name of Red Ears, and he was my buddy. You know, I mean, he was an irascible old goat of a donkey, but he was really quite sweet if you were a child. He didn't like adults.
Oh, well, yeah. I find that true about most donkeys, and having ridden a donkey, I'm confused when people tell me they own donkeys, and I'm going to tell you why. Because for me, when I was growing up on my grandparents' farm, we had a donkey because my grandfather furrowed rows. And what I mean by furrowed rows is you plow the field and then you set the rows up to put in the seeds, and those rows are high, they're tall. And there's a special piece of equipment that you use on a tractor or you use when a donkey is pulling it. And that furrows the rows. And Papa Lee had a tractor, but he would do the turning over of the field, and then he would furrow with the donkey. He said it was the only way to furrow a row. So I never understood why people had donkeys if they didn't furrow rows or do something with them. So why did you have donkeys?
So we were kind of like the misfit mismatch farm. We had peacocks, we had ducks, we had goats, we had little piggies, we had everything. We had a longhorn steer named Lots of Dots. These animals were as much pets as they were anything else.
I see.
My uncle was, well, let's just say he was a maestro with a barbecue pit.
Okay.
Which is, I mean, we raised them. We would eat fresh meat and everything. But for the most part, at some point, if you made it past a certain tenure on our farm, you were just basically family at that point, and you basically aged out by shuffling off the mortal coil.
I see. Well, when on my farm, on my grandparents' farm, which I spent a lot of time with my grandmother, who is a Christian mystic, and so we spent a lot of time with her, and we raised cattle, but we were a working farm. We had we raised corn and cotton and peanuts and potatoes were our cash crops. And then my grandfather hunted both pheasant and deer. And we would have that meat all year round. And then he would slaughter usually 1 or 2 cows a year. Because he didn't just feed us. This is the thing about, I don't think people understand about Southern farms. They were family farms. And so whoever owned the farm, if they slaughtered something, it wasn't one family that ate that. It was 3 or 4 families that would eat that, which is why we would end up slaughtering more than 1 cow a year, because the meat went to all of his children and all of those houses. So it was a multi-generational kind of thing. And on the farm, I had an uncle that actually helped do that farm for years and lived on the same property, like a mile away in a trailer, with his family. So I spent a lot of time running back and forth with my cousins. So that's not urban.
No,
What
there's not.
happened?
Um, so an interesting thing happens when you pack a couple of generations of family into a quarter-mile stretch of the same dirt road. They get real sick and tired of each other, and eventually, my mom is like, "I cannot handle the drama." It was calamity, catastrophe, drama constantly, because no matter what they say, Southerners love drama and gossip and all that, and family is 10 times worse than even strangers. So eventually, we moved away, not to an urban area. There were a couple of leapfroggy moves before that. But I very quickly realized that if I didn't get out of the country, I was going to lose my full mind. So I moved to the big city of Gainesville, Florida. Um, uh, Talk about delusions of grandeur. Um, yeah, Gainesville, and I was fairly comfortable in Gainesville for about 15 years. The it it was a mid-sized city or mid-sized town. It had the University of Florida there.
Right.
So I mean it had a population of around 200,000 for most of the year, fluctuated with the university. But now I live in Seattle, and that is not a city with delusions of grandeur. It's just grand. And I am surrounded on all sides by the set of a Tolkien movie. I have mountains on every side, I have
Oh,
evergreens, and it is, you walk outside 3 quarters of the year and you can smell cedar and pine, even in the urban places. And
wow.
I have found that that is something I don't want, I need.
Right.
Like I need to have some nature in an urban environment.
Yep.
But that doesn't mean that I can just go out and, throw up a bonfire and do my witchy thing under the full moon in the nearest park. Um, Seattle PD is pretty understanding, but that understanding has its limits.
It's funny that you should say that because Tony and I now live, my husband and I now live in Gwinnett County, Georgia. It's the most populous county in Georgia. And we actually have almost three-fourths of an acre, which is a lot in an urban area. And
Mhm.
but our backyard is open. We made a circle during COVID. It was our COVID um, project. We made a flagstone circle out in the back. It's very beautiful. But our neighbors behind us look right into our circle. And it also looks right onto our deck, which means that if we go out there, their dog will bark. So anytime we're out on the back porch, the dog is barking at us, right? And he usually will calm down if you're out there for a little while. He'll get over it and he'll stop. But he's a barker. And so Tony wants to go out, be able to go out there. And also our back deck opens to on sliding doors
Mhm.
right into the kitchen so you can see into the kitchen as well. So he put up a he put up a screen, I'm not kidding you, that is 9 feet high. It goes, it's actually attached to the deck and it goes all the way around the deck where anybody in that backyard would be able to see into the deck. They can no longer see into the deck. And he's about to put, do you know what a sail shade is? Have you
Mhm.
ever heard
Yeah.
of this? Okay, so
Yeah.
sail shades are these wonderful sun reflective things that you can put up um, as cover for yourself in a backyard or some situation like this. And he's had a personalized sail shade made for us so he can put it on top of this 9 foot structure and attach it to the house so we will not be in the heat of the summer and still be able to be out there. And really, those sails, we have had those sail shades for a while of different types, and they work fabulous. And it really does make it so you can sit out there in the summer when you wouldn't normally be able to sit outside because of the heat. So, yeah, so talk about making sure your witchy self. I can actually go out there naked now and nobody would be able to see me because because of this, because my husband has made sure no one can see us. So the only thing is you can still see our circle, and that has led to some urban adventures. One time we had a circle, and we start the circle and we can tell that the people just behind the fence are doing something, but we don't know what they're doing until halfway through our ritual when the mariachi band starts. And I'm talking about a live mariachi band. Not not a recording. No, these are live people standing on the stairs. They could see into our circle and they are serenading the people that can't see us. So yeah, it's urban. We're urban, that's for sure.
Yes, I love the completely random things that can happen when you try to put a circle surrounded by people.
Yeah.
Um, we had one. We used to use space at the Unitarian Fellowship
Mhm.
in Gainesville, and they had an absolutely beautiful campus. And
They
the
sure did.
Unitarians are wonderful people.
Yep.
They are so kind, and their door is always open to everyone. It was probably the most comfortable I have ever felt in a church-like building since
Mhm.
I decided to become a pagan. And we had one day where I don't know what was happening. It was like the zombie apocalypse off campus. There were fire trucks. And these were not like one big event, not one big terrible thing happened, but it was just a very active day. And helicopters were going by, and it was just a ton of urban noise pollution. The problem was, though, the real issue was not an urban problem. It was this one crow. And so my priestess at the time had been preparing this ritual for a while. She was really excited about it. And every time she tried to speak, this crow would machine gun caw like it was laughing. And every time there was a bit of sound coming from the surrounding urbanness, it was just like it was ridiculous. It sounded like an old style Tommy gun, and it only happened when she opened her mouth to speak. It got to the point you could see the frustration on her face. And everybody in the circle, we felt bad, but we were also laughing because most pagans
Right.
tend to have a ridiculous sense of humor. And
Yes.
if you have to laugh with nature because you can't
Right.
beat nature.
No.
Oh my good. One of the people in attendance, he laughed so hard. He just eventually he sank down to his knees and was laughing in the grass because it was so ridiculous. And you just kind of had to be there. But it was yeah.
Oh, it's that sounds funny. And I know that priestess, so it's even funnier. Um, I am. So that's the urban part of urban unwitches, and then there's the unwitch part, and that sounds like a weird term, but that's my fault because I decided that I would start posting on TikTok because I felt like not enough older people who've been in the craft a long time, and you and I together have 50 years experience in the craft. So we've been around a while and we've seen a lot of changes. And I decided I would, get on TikTok and start posting things. And I tell this to someone and they go, "Oh, honey, you don't have the aesthetic for being a witch on TikTok." And I went, "Oh." And then I got to looking at Witch Talk with its witchy aesthetic, right? The spell bottles and the cutesy girls in hats and all these boho dresses and all that stuff. And that certainly is not me. And I go on to TikTok and I tell TikTok, "Hey, I evidently can't, I'm not witchy enough for Witch Talk. And so I can't really post on TikTok because nobody will follow me because I'm not witchy enough. I guess I'm just an unwitch." And that's where unwitch came from. So the un being that I'm not that witchy aesthetic. I was a soccer mom. I was a Boy Scout mom. My son is 27 now, but we did all of those normal things. And I always like to say my husband makes sound. He makes large sound systems for places of worship. and nobody would see him in a place of worship and suspect that he is also a high priest, but he is. And so that's kind of what we were getting at, that the unwitches, we don't look like we would be witches, but we are. And we pay our taxes and we're really boring witches, right? Like we're not out here trying to start witch wars or anything like that. We're just people having a good laugh and having a good time, and we happen to be very serious about our spirituality that happens to be witchcraft, which leads to what is that term, like witchcraft, right? Then you get into witch, Wiccan, pagan. Which one do you identify as, Kyler?
So, great question. Also, love the Pandora's box of terms that you just opened on us there
Yeah.
spontaneously. Uh, so much baggage with so many of those words,
Yep.
good and bad. It kind of depends on the day. That's a really excellent question. I have been a Wiccan. I am a Wiccan priest. I have actually had a traditional training, which means I've been part of a Brit Trad or a British traditional Wicca. I have been an interfaith minister. I have been just a witch, practicing a philosophy and path without the more spiritual side of it.
Right.
I am versed in like Southern root conjure and sorcery.
Right.
Each of these words having a very specific flavor of how you practice. So it just kind of depends on the day. I've done high muckety muck tinfoil paper hat high magician stuff.
Right, because
Kind of
you were with Church of All Worlds, right?
I was with Church of All Worlds. I did get ordination through WCC in Canada and
Right.
the tradition there. So I've been really fortunate in being able to walk a bunch of paths. So it's so funny when people use words, and these words have just become like a schmear. Like they mean so many different things now to so many
Yeah,
different people.
it's
How about
true.
you? How do you see yourself?
I'm very specific about how I see myself, actually. I first claimed the term pagan because that is the term that most people use today, period, full stop. Just because everybody tends to use that term, that's the term I'll go with. If everybody used the term Wiccan, I would go with the term Wiccan. Whatever is the most broad term to describe earth-based practitioner,
Hmm.
that's what I would go with, right? And Selena Fox would say we should be going to earth-based practitioner because
Yeah,
that's more descriptive even than pagan can be.
right.
Um, but I consider myself a Scotch Celtic witch. And what that means is I study the Celtic pantheons specifically as they appear in Scotland, and I am a witch, meaning I do magic as well as celebrate the Wheel of the Year, the 8 Sabbats that all some pagans celebrate, which is an agricultural wheel that celebrates the movement of the sun around the earth around the sun, rather. And then I do magic, and I don't do it a lot. Here's the thing: I'm not like busting out again, not witch talk. I'm not busting out a spell every time I get mad, but I do witchcraft. And my coven that I'm a part of here in Gwinnett County, Willow Dragonstone, we do magic as a group on a regular basis. So that's why I would term myself a witch. Because as the big Venn diagram that Jason Mankey has put together says, all pagans are in some way, all witches and Wiccans are pagans, but not all Wiccans are witches, and not all witches are Wiccans.
Hmm.
Look it up. It's a great Venn diagram that explains those three terms in relationship to each other. But I can remember when the term was Wiccan, and that was the term everybody used, right?
Hmm.
And if you talk to someone like uh, Janet Farrar, Janet
Hmm.
Farrar would say, she can remember when the sayings were, it takes a Gardnerian to make a Gardnerian. And then it turned into, it takes a witch to make a witch. It takes a
Hmm.
Wiccan to make a Wiccan. And then it was, it takes a witch to make a witch. So over time, we've seen these things change. And the question that I have is, does it matter? Do you think it matters? Like,
I
that's the thing.
I love that you think my brain works in a linear way, that there is just one answer to that. I adore that about you. It implies a faith in me that I do not possess. The I think in certain contexts, so like words have meaning. I mean, that's if you have ever read Isaac Bonowitz's Real Magic, like he
Right.
goes through and he defines the laws of magic, and one of the big ones are words have power. You know, when you talk to somebody you love, if they use the right combination of words, it can elate you or it can throw you down into depression. Like
Right.
words have power.
Right.
And when we homogenize words, we kind of strip some of that power out. Now, I am somebody who's, how do they put it in Harry Potter? Your soul is the dust is as dusty as the books you cling to. That is that is me. I love the etymology of words and where they come from. So on some days, yeah, I think it really does matter if you're trying to be specific, but most people aren't trying to be specific. They don't have the context for that. And so I'm pretty easygoing with things. Now, if somebody says I'm a sorcerer, I'm going to ask them specifically what they mean. I'm going to
Yeah.
dig down into that because they could be talking about Dungeons and Dragons.
Right.
I mean, that's been a big thing I've seen in the last few years is since COVID especially, D&D has become so popular. People who are finding their way into the craft now, they've got these ideas of what things are, and these words are now kind of anchored in their previous experience. And so that's been it's been a little interesting unthreading that. I had somebody who was a young seeker who was asking about Fireball, and now listen, I love me some D&D, and I love me a Fireball. Every arrow may have your name on it, but Fireball is addressed to who it may concern. Um,
Or we're not talking about the drink, I assume.
No, we are not. A fireball is an area of effect spell that is it's really bread and butter for your average D&D sorcerer. Makes a big
Oh.
boom and it's wonderful. You're not going to throw a fireball as a modern pagan, whether you're an urban unwitch or a
Oh.
witchy witch talk witch or any of those in between. Um, Now, I'm sorry to disappoint because we have all wanted to throw a fireball a timer 1200, especially
Isn't
lately.
that the truth? I got one better. I got one better. You just reminded me. So I had a seeker one time and I said, what are you looking for? What do you want to achieve? And he said, well, really, I would like it if we could get the spirits to paint my house. And I
Oh,
went, what? You what?
oh my goodness.
And he was like, I want the spirits to paint my house. I want to be able to command the spirits to come and paint my house. And I said,
Wow.
yeah, it doesn't work that way.
No,
Because if
no.
it did, do you think my house would look like this? I'm just saying.
But he is singing a song my heart knows well. If I could wave my hand and Mickey Fantasia the laundry done, oh yes, sign me
Yes,
up. Yeah.
absolutely. Oh my gosh. I hadn't thought about that in so long. It has been a long time since I've thought about that. Sweet, sweet guy who went on to join the Masons and is just gotten engaged. Wonderful young man. Was a little confused. And
Yeah.
I like you were talking about D&D. You D&D on a
Mhm.
regular basis. I LARP, which is live action role play, which is kind of like D&D, but you get to dress up and pretend in real time and real action. We have spell packets that are bird seeds in a little cotton cloth that's tied with cotton yarn. And the reason it's all that is because it will degrade and
Mhm.
what's left is helpful to the environment, not harmful. So that's why I'm being very specific about how we use our spell packets. But then you take those spell packets, and if you're going to do a spell, you claim the spell, fireball, and then you throw it at the person, and if it hits the person, they take damage, right? And that's how magic works in LARP. It doesn't require rolling. D&D requires rolling and stuff, and we don't roll. With the fireball has already a preset amount of damage it's going to do, right? And so we do that. One time, the the spell that I had was called Corman, and corpsmen meant that I could go up to someone and stabilize them immediately, and so they wouldn't die. So they got more time on their clock, because when you get hit, you start counting, and if you count past a certain amount of time, then you're dead. So we were in battle, and one of our really good players, who's not a fighter, because you can have a really good player that's not a fighter. Maybe they are medical and they can sew people up real quick, or maybe they're can fix armor real quick during a battle. And so we're in this battle, and somebody comes through and gives a death blow to one of these good players, and then runs off. Right, the bad guy ran away, and everybody's standing around. And so I went, I put your guts back in your body because I can't remember the name of this spell. So yeah, that's how we roll in LARP, which is nothing like the real world.
how we don't roll in LARP.
That's true. We don't roll in LARP. That's for sure. So we've talked about Unwitched. We've talked about Wiccan. So how would you describe Wiccan? I mean, that's a term.
Yeah, that is a term. Okay, so if you will forgive me for a brief nerd moment here, when it comes to the word Wiccan. So we've talked about pagan, we've talked about witch, but to really understand how you get from that to Wiccan, you kind of have to understand kind of where they came from. So like we both kind of grew up in the country. We talked about that. Well, that's really what pagan means. So the word pagan comes from the Latin word pagani, which basically means country bumpkin. It means yokel. Christianity, when the old religion and the new kind of interacted, Christianity is a religion of the book. So it started in population centers with people who could read, which usually meant the nobility and all of that.
Right.
People who practiced the old religion were pagani. They were the country dwellers. And so it literally means hick. And so over time, as only the people, the pagani, who practiced the old religion, they lived out in the country, and everybody in the city centers were Christian, that became they follow the old religion. Now the word pagan means anybody who practices a either earth-based or polytheistic religion that is not part of the core Abrahamic revealed faith.
Right.
The word witch has existed for a very long time, and it's meant different things. It usually traditionally refers to someone who traffics with familiar spirits, so they have spiritual allies. The idea that you can wave your hands and make magic happen, relatively new thing.
Right, and that comes from the Malleus Maleficorum, as do most of our ideas about what a witch are. The Malleus Maleficorum is the witch's hammer, and I wouldn't recommend you read it. It's a how to torture people book, but it also talks about witches having green skin, and witches riding broomsticks, and witches having a conical hat, and witches having hair on their face and moles on their faces, and all of this stuff comes from the Malleus Maleficorum. And the reason that's important is because the Malleus Maleficorum and the Bible happened to start being printed at the same time, which is when the Gutenberg press came out. And the Malleus Maleficorum would often be printed right next to the Bible. So this information was being disseminated as well as with the Bible. So it got that same, it was like on the bestseller list for hundreds of years. And it was, this Malleus Maleficorum was part of that. If you can imagine, books were not the way as transient as they are today. And so someone would buy the Bible and keep that for years and years and years and pass it down the family. And so that meant the Malleus Maleficorum went right along with it.
Absolutely. And it's so funny because the idea of witches being these supernatural creatures, they would have to sell their soul to the devil, and then they would get these infernal powers and all of this. But you were still dealing with the idea of like a spirit. It's like you've made this pact to get these powers.
Right.
In the 18th century, so the late 1700s, there was a concept that started in, I think the first writing around it was in Italy. and it talked about the magia naturalis, the natural mage or the natural witch, who had
Mhm.
these supernatural powers, and that has really led into a lot of different movements. But that kind of brings us to the early 1920s when Gerald Gardner kind of founded
Right.
Wicca.
Sure.
And Gerald Gardner, the original salty old dog himself,
Hmm.
he started this movement. He inducted priests and priestesses and all this other stuff, and created Wicca. And Wicca became the word for witchcraft because there was this move to mainstream everything,
Right.
and they wanted acceptance. And then time goes on, and the flower power movement in this country, which brings um, Buckland and all the other
Right.
influences of Gardnerian and Alexandrian Wicca. And so this move to mainstream
Hmm.
is massive for decades, and Wicca becomes the term. People will use the term witch and they try to reclaim that, but it's got centuries of baggage. So the word Wicca gets used in place of like literally everything. And then you
Hmm.
have the 90s. And the 90s were such a fun time
Oh,
because you have the
Michelle
craft.
remembers. Yay.
Yes. You have the movie The Craft. You have Charmed. You have witches are suddenly not just not bad; they can be heroes.
Right.
You by the power of three times three, as I will, so mote it be. All that fun stuff. Because spells only work when they rhyme. You guys got to remember that. That's a hardcore truth. Um, I mean, there was a time I believed that every single thing I did was the highest muckety muck poetry. Um, oh,
But
it's
while that hero thing is going on, then you also have the evangelical movement during the 90s bringing on satanic panic, and that's why
yeah.
you
Oh yeah.
have that's why the term witch often is associated with Satanism,
Mhm.
because during the satanic panic they took words like what one of the books was called Wiccan, Satan's dirty secret, or Satanism, Wicca's dirty secret, or something like
Mhm.
that. So it was basically implying that if you were Wiccan, you were somehow associated with Satanism. And
Yeah.
I think most pagans today they would say that Satanism is not necessarily bad nor good. It's its own religion, and it's an Abrahamic religion because
Right.
it comes out of that pantheon, if you will, of Christ and the angels and demons and all of that is associated with Christianity or any of the Abrahamic religions. So, and I mentioned Michelle Remembers is a book that was proven to be false about a girl who was in some satanic cult. And
Mhm.
I live in Georgia, and Georgia was one of the places where the satanic panic took over a child care center, and all these adults got arrested on crazy accusations that were proven to be false. Even some, like at one point, they said there was a dungeon under the kids said there was a dungeon underneath the, the child care center, which there wasn't. Like they
Mhm.
literally there was not. So yeah, so the satanic panic changed a lot of things, and that's kind of why we end up today with Satanism being mistaken for paganism. I've had that recently. A
Mhm.
very recent seeker came to me, and I said, "What have you been studying?" And he said Alexander LaVey, and I said, "No, it's Anton LaVey,"
And
and I
Tom LaVey.
said,
Yeah.
"That's Satanism," and he goes, "Yeah, paganism," and I said, "No, no. No, no, no. Let's be very clear. Paganism is its own thing, and
Yeah.
Satanism is its own thing. That doesn't mean you can't study Satanism. I'm just saying let's not conflate the two. They're not the same. They
They're
are
not the
different.
yeah. It hearing that story makes me feel so warm and fuzzy because we think about like the Salem witch trials and the the quote unquote burning times and all that. That was 400, 300, 400 years ago, and it can still happen today.
Yep.
I mean, we look at what's happening in the world today, and you can
Yep.
see how the right propaganda at the right time can really push people kind of out of a place of reason and common sense. And religion has the power to do that. It's one of those
Hmm.
shortcuts straight to powerful emotional responses. Um, I I constantly have the conversation with seekers and people who want to know me better about what it means to be a pagan today. And there's a term that an old mentor of mine, he was probably my first true focus teacher. His name was Luke Munok. He was with the Church of All Worlds. We recently lost him. And he was one of those people so kind that the world shines a little bit less brightly for having lost
Right.
him. He used the term eco-spirituality. And
Mm.
that one, when I first was introduced to this, I knew what it meant immediately. The words are pretty self-explanatory, but my knowledge base broadened, I began to realize paganism, animism, all of those things that are part of the modern pagan experience is rooted in a love of this world that we live in, and the recognition of the beauty of its ecosystems and all of that. So earth-based spirituality um, is a reason for, I think, a lot of the panic from the evangelical movement and all that, because it's growing. It's still growing. Like in the 90s, when that satanic panic came about, they were afraid because, like in Australia, for most of the 90s, Wicca was growing at a rate of 200%. It maintained that level of growth for the better part of a decade, and it's trailed off a bit, but there's almost like a return to this earth as we see climate change, as we see all of these things happening.
Yeah.
There's a return to organic religion that lives and breathes and adapts and fits us.
Yeah, isn't it? I want to say, is it Denmark? Which country is it that made paganism their
Iceland.
brand? Iceland.
It
I
was
knew it was
Iceland.
one of those countries.
They have
Iceland has made
returned.
return to paganism as the main religion for their
Well,
country.
there were some countries that they did that anyway. So, like for instance, Japan is still a Shinto religion.
Yes,
I believe it's
right.
Shinto. Like the emperor isn't an emperor like we would have in the West. He's more like the high priest of this
Right.
religion. Iceland did it. They returned to Odinic heathenism.
Right.
And that's another word that gets taught. Like I can remember the term godless heathen being thrown around.
Yes.
Specifically, a heath is a flat plain with low scrub brushes. Most
Right.
of Scotland is a heath.
Yep.
And that's where the term comes from, a godless heathen. Where most of the people in Britain would refer to the pagans of Scotland and the North area as godless heathens. Also, the Norse that would come down, much of their area were heath, or was a heath. Heathenry, Odinic heathenry, is basically the religion of following Odin and the Asgard and all of that, not to be confused with Sir Anthony Hopkins and the Marvel universe. Very different entities.
Very different.
And I will admit that there are times that I think about Loki and Tom Hiddleston's face, because yowza.
Yes. Please. Yes, please. I can't help it. Somebody says
Oh, yeah.
Loki and I go, oh yeah.
Double scoop, yeah. All the toppings. With a spoon. That man is gorgeous.
Oh my god, he is so good looking. He's one of my celebrity crushes. True facts. Like I think if I ever met him in person, I would just pass out.
Oh yeah. Do not let me meet famous people. I very nearly, almost, kind of, sorta encountered Reba McEntire when I was in high school.
Oh no.
I am sure that poor woman is still traumatized from like 6 feet of ginger just screaming, "Fancy! Oh my god, it's fancy!" Like my friend had to drag me to the car. I cannot be trusted to behave like an adult. I have impulse control.
So I'm a big True Blood fan, and so that means that I was also a big fan of, what's his name? Oh my god, tall.
Alexander Skarsgård.
No, well, yes, Alexander Skarsgård for sure, but he wasn't at this convention. I was at Dragon Con, which is a big nerd convention here in Georgia, and it was his. Oh man, I can't think of his name. I'm feel so bad about
Bill?
that.
Like Vampire Bill?
No, he became who was in Magic Mike as well.
Joe Manganiello. He was
Joe Manganiello. Thank you.
Yeah.
So
yeah,
I went to a True Blood panel. Joe Manganiello was there, And I am disabled. So I was in a wheelchair because this is during a time when my disability is chronic. And so it's can be acute and it can be not acute. And
Right.
I was in an acute thing. And I don't look like I should be in a wheelchair even when I'm in a
Right.
wheelchair. So I'm in a wheelchair and Joe Manganiello was there. He almost spoke to me at that meeting, but I could tell I'm psychic, so I could tell his question was, why is she in a wheelchair? What
Mhm.
is that about? Right? And he's very health conscious. And so they were wheeling me to get in line to meet Joe Manganiello. And I was like, I want to go home. And they were like, what? And I was like, I just want to go home. Because I was so afraid that he was going to say, why are you in a wheelchair? And I would have to defend myself, which is something I have to do on a regular basis anyway. And I was
Mhm.
like, I would be so disappointed. I'd rather not meet Joe than find out that's what Joe thought, right? So I
Yeah.
left because I was that big of a coward. I was like, nope, not going to do it. Nope, nope, we're going to go home
I
now.
I wish I was a coward. I aspire to be a coward. I am the dramatic queen who would have swooned for him to catch, just so that I could feel his rugged masculine hands. Oh my God. That man is wonderful and a
Yeah.
really nice person to be
Yes,
like,
that I have learned since
super
then
nice
that
guy.
he's a super nice guy and that I probably would have had no trouble whatsoever. But
Absolutely.
and I did meet a lot of I fangirled a lot that weekend because I'm a book reader and I met Laurel K. Hamilton and other Sherilyn Kenyon. So I met a lot of people. I actually have pictures with both of those
Oh,
people
be still your mouth,
floating
Lord.
around in the ether. But yeah, so I did have enough balls to go meet some of my favorite book
Mhm.
authors. But so we got off topic. We do that, you and
We
I.
have more tangents than a geometry class, do you? Like,
Well, and that's part of why I got you to do this, right? I was like, who could talk and talk and talk? It's Kyler. Kyler could do that.
I am going to take that as a compliment as I
It
fall in
is.
line with your devious master plan.
It is. So we've talked about witch, Wiccan, and pagan. We've talked about Joe Manganiello.
Mm.
We've talked about Alexandra Skarsgård and Tom Hiddleston. Let us talk about pantheons, and the idea of polytheistic religion, animism,
Ooh, yes.
henotheism. Let's talk about those terms for a minute, because those are often associated and go along with earth-based religions. And so polytheism would be the belief, and you can be hard polytheist and soft polytheist. A hard polytheist says all gods are separate gods. There is no one God. And then a soft polytheist might say that God is a diamond, divinity is a diamond, and if I change my location, the part of the diamond that light that I'm getting is a different god or goddess, and so it's all goes back to that saying,
Mhm.
all gods are one god, all goddesses one goddess. That kind of idea, that would be a soft polytheist. But your favorite term is henotheism, isn't that
Yeah,
right?
henotheism is a thing, and it's also a process. I was first introduced to this by Luke, the mentor that I mentioned earlier. You see this in a way with Hinduism.
Right.
Not the same spelling. It took me a little while to figure that out because the internet was not as helpful in the early days of my life. There's Hinduism, and then there's Henotheism, Heno.
Right.
So Hinduism is the process that hard polytheistic cultures go through as their gods begin to kind of merge into one. So, like, if you take a really good example of this would be the ancient Israelites. If you look in the Bible, I believe it's in Psalms, there's a passage that says, "And lo, God sat in council amongst his brethren, and amongst them he was chiefest. And among them there was El Batai and Elohim and El Batai." There's, it
Right.
lists off all these other gods, but later on, Yahweh, Jehovah, these are all different names for him.
Right.
And so what winds up happening is over time, these deities all just kind of amalgamate into one. And so in Hinduism, it is a process by which people begin to see these hard separations soften, and divinity comes from one source, and it has
Mhm.
an infinite number of faces. Um, and it's a really interesting process. Like, if you understand how a culture goes through that, you're going to understand so much about that culture in its contemporary form.
Right. I was teaching my seeker class on an intro to paganism, and I always touch on the idea of pop magic,
Mhm.
which says that people, divinities, if I dare say, like Sailor Moon,
Mhm.
have become an entity in which you can relate to and energetically connect to, because they've had so much adoration over
Mhm.
time and so much energy has been put into them that they now are, and I would like Hello Kitty to me is the same thing. And even the likes of my favorite pop magic is He-Man, because I went to a I went to a ritual one time that was He-Man Masters of the Universe, and it was fabulous, and it used the He-Man world to create the gods and goddesses that you were dealing with, from She-Ra to He-Man to Grayskull. All of that was in there, and it
Mhm.
was great. And it worked because that energy, again, you're talking about how much energy is being put into something, and it kind of begins to take on a life of its own. It's really reminiscent of American Gods, the book, where you
Mhm.
have the new gods and the old gods fighting each other. But
Right.
in my world, they don't fight, they just exist, right? That's why Marilyn Monroe is okay being modern Aphrodite, and Aphrodite can still be Aphrodite.
Absolutely. I love that you went there with that, because in one of my previous traditions we talk a lot about the different faces of deity, and the micro versus the macro, and how things are reflected. One of the posits that we used to give was, could you do a ritual based around a goddess, and who would you pick? And somebody eventually picked Wonder Woman, Diana of Themyscira,
Oh,
and
yeah.
that's a good one. I mean, she's a child of the
Hmm.
Greek gods. She's truth, justice, and the Western way, and all of this, and she looks pretty great in the leotard. All of those things, um, and it is always for me a conversation starter for the idea of an indweller. Now, this is not a term that everybody uses, but this is how I learned it. And an indweller is, if you're talking about, say, Zeus and Odin, and or Thor in this particular case, because we're dealing with lightning, you're dealing with gods of the storm.
Right.
So where do they end and where do they begin?
Mm.
There is, at least in my practice, there is a thread of that divine lightning, that power that rages through the storm,
Hmm.
and the spirit that lives within that is like, it's the raging river underneath, and you get all the little streams that come from it. And so the indweller of the storm is the core of that, and how you plug into that doesn't really matter so much. The rest is window dressing for us who
Mm.
need that as a conduit to connect. But like,
Mm.
one of the little twisters that I give to people, if you go down to the ocean
Mm.
and you reach your hand in and you pull out a cup
Mm.
of that water,
Right.
is it still the ocean?
Right. Right.
And oh my goodness, the number of times people argue, well, it's just semantics. I'm like, yes, but there's something behind the
Right.
semantics. Like,
Right.
it's trying to illustrate something and make you think about the connectivity of our natural world, where modern religions are rooted in separateness.
Hmm.
Paganism is rooted
It's
in
rooted.
connectedness.
Yep.
And in this digital world, that part of us that needs connection, that social part of us that doesn't get fed through the Twitter and the TikToks and the all that, we crave that. And I think that's one of the reasons why paganism is everywhere you can throw a stone these days.
Hmm. Hmm. I agree. I think that I was just thinking about that because one of the shows we could do is on all of the sayings, but one of the sayings that is popular in paganism is "as above, so below; as within, so
Mhm.
without," and it's talking about literally as it is in the heavens, the stars, it is on this earth, and as it is on this earth, it is in the heavens. And as it is within yourself, it is outside of yourself. And as it is outside of yourself, it is within yourself. And that's talking again about that connectivity. These powerful phrases that we've had that have kind of been born through people like Doreen Valiente, who was a high priestess in her own right, but also a great writer of liturgy for the pagan people. You know, these all have special meanings. I carry a book around with all of this stuff written in it so that I can refer to it when I am feeling down. And I think that's something else that people don't think about paganism. We have, just as other religions do, we have our own prayers. We have our own way of connecting with divinity on a regular basis. It's an intimate religion in the same way that Christianity can be very intimate with divinity. We are also intimate with divinity, and I think that's one of the things that makes us why we continue to thrive and why we continue to have people seek us out, I think.
Oh, absolutely.
So have we been talking for an hour for real?
I mean, it's very easy that we have. I can lose entire afternoons with a cup of tea and my favorite Dia. So,
That's true. So, one of the things we wanted to do was we wanted to talk, we wanted to acknowledge that the world right now is crap and that there's a lot of stress and trauma, quite frankly, that's happening in our world. And so we wanted to end all of our sessions with something called Resiliency Corner. And Resiliency Corner is where we take a method of creating resiliency in yourself in these harsh times that you could go and do yourself. And one of the things that I do is I pick a animal oracle, and I do an animal oracle because animal oracles don't have bad or good connotations for me. They are just things, right? So my animal oracle today was hawk, and it said, let spirit be your guide. And the animal oracle that I use is the Spirit Animal Oracle by Colette Baron Reed, with illustrations by Jenna Delagote. I don't know that I said that right. That is a long, crazy word. I think it's Italian, but she has beautiful writing, beautiful illustrations. So that's one thing that you can do, to pick that and meditate on that and let that be kind of a balm to your spirit instead of just focusing on all the bad things that are really all the crazy things. Like just keeping up is a whole thing, right? Like what it is in the morning is not what it is at night. It is that crazy out there right now. So we just want to acknowledge that, and we want to tell you that part of why we did this, part of why Urban Unwitches is come to fruition, is because we want to develop and create community. We will have a Discord channel out that you'll be able to add to. We are available at urbanunwitches@gmail.com. So you can reach out to us and tell us what you think about the podcast and suggest topics that we're going to talk about. And this is about, how this is going to go. We're going to have a topic, and today's topic obviously was different words and what words mean and how they mean specifically in paganism. And we're going to kind of do that every time we come to you. And hopefully that'll be about twice a month. That's the plan right now. I am, and we never really introduced ourselves, but I'm not sorry about that. My name is Rev Dia, and you can get me at revdia.net. I am as I've said, a Scotch Celtic witch, but I'm also a high priestess. I'm also a reverend through Circle Sanctuary. And I am an active interfaith minister. I work in Gwinnett County with the Gwinnett Interfaith, Gwinnett Interfaith Alliance, and with the GILP, which is a great ecological interfaith group. So I do that, and I consider myself a seer. My grandmother was a seer. My grandmother knew things, and people came and had tea with her. I think the same way they came and had tea with your grandmother, Kyler. These wise women of the Appalachians who knew things, and people would come and seek their information. And I spent most of my time with my grandmother because I was shown very young to have the gift. And so I spent a lot of time with her. She was really my first teacher. And then eventually I would go on and take a Brit Trad training and become a third degree through a Brit Trad training as well. And then I would go on to do 3 years of training with Circle Sanctuary. So that's kind of a little bit about me. Kyler, what about you?
Well, I am to quote Tyrion Lannister, I drink and I know things. No, and I don't drink.
I was about to say
I
you don't drink.
I don't really drink. It's like a cocktail every now and then. A rum and coke is as far as I'll go because you get old and hangovers are just not something
Just
you ever want to deal with.
truth.
I I think of myself really as the luckiest person in paganism because I have been very fortunate to know really wonderful people, and yourself being one of them. I am a country bumpkin who managed to learn from some really, really bright people. I have been an interfaith minister, and I like to think I still do that work every day. I have a Brit Trad training. I am an inducted priest. I have the practices of my family that were passed down to me, all through the cloth of the Southern Baptist perspective.
Yep.
Some unthreading there. Um, and I am a passive aggressive Luddite. I am trying to embrace social media and technology, but my Google Calendar still offends me by not doing exactly what I want it to do and doing what it's programmed to do, and that's not fun. Um,
Right. What
so
Kyler
I
won't tell you is he's also a wonderful, wonderful artist and a fabulous, awesome artist. And evidently, he likes to write bad poetry, but he won't tell me any. So I can't verify that fact, as a matter of fact. And he's been married. How many years have you been married?
Chris and I are officially coming up on about 3 years now.
Awesome.
So July will be our third year, and truly every day it's become that marriage that every day I realize I am just the luckiest man in the world.
Aw.
That I found a true partner who gets me and I can get, and it's a resonance and a harmony every day. And honestly,
Oh.
if it hadn't been for him, I would never have summoned up the courage to actually put my face on something that's being recorded. And do understand that the moment "you are being recorded" came up, there was a spike of adrenaline because once it's on the internet is forever's.
Oh,
So
I know. That is so true. I
it's
still get, don't look this up, y'all, but there is a podcast out there where I take on, who was it? I think it was Oberon Zell Ravenheart, where Oberon Zell Ravenheart and I get into an argument um, about many things. And every once in a while, someone will find that podcast and then write me and go, man, you really went after him. And I go, yeah, damn, is that still out there? Hiding amongst the weeds. I and the reason I did that was because I am also a pagan author, and I also have a bachelor's of science in psychology, and then I have some concentrations in theater, of course, and journalism, and I still write upon occasion, and I'm working on a book right now. So, yeah, Kyler, I think we've done it. I think we've ended our first one. I think
We did it.
yay! So next time we're going to talk about ethics and morals because we thought that was a really good second
Mhm.
thing to do. And we hope that you'll come back to Urban Unwitches and listen to Kyler Petrie and Rev Dia talk about these things and learn something and contribute as we go along. We would love that. Thank you and have a great day.
Thank
Oh,
you so
no, have a magical day because that's how I'm going to sign off. I'm going to
Insert
sign off.
tagline.
Have a magical day. How are you signing off?
I didn't practice for
You
this,
didn't practice
Dia.
what? Okay, so next time Kyler will have a way to sign off. My way to sign
Yes.
off is have a magical day. We hope we we hope we run into you again soon. Have a magical day. Thank you for listening to Urban Unwitches. Please reach co-host Kyler Petrie and Rev Dia at urbanunwitches@gmail.com. That's urbanunwitches@gmail.com to suggest topics for shows or comment on past episodes. Please join our Discord channel, Urban Unwitches Podcast. Follow us on TikTok at Urban Unwitches. Follow us on YouTube at Urban Unwitches to watch all episodes. And listen to all our past podcasts on your favorite podcasting platform. Rev Dia is a witch for hire as an officiant, life coach, astrologer, geomancer, and medium, and can be reached at www.revdia.net. See you next time. Thank you for joining us on the Circle Podcast, presented by Circle Sanctuary, and produced for all who follow nature-centered paths. Join us throughout the week for various programming connecting with the community around the world. Please don't forget to watch for updates on the Circle Sanctuary website at www.circlesanctuary.org. Follow us on Facebook at Facebook/Circle Podcasts. We can also be found on your favorite podcast hosting sites, such as iTunes, Spotify, and others. Until next time, many blessings.